Hello, everyone, and welcome to Territories Talk for today, April 3rd, Thursday, April 3rd. I'm Shirley Osborne, your host, and welcome. The very first thing I'll do is I will acknowledge my regular co-hosts, who are Christopher Famous from Bermuda and Shayna Smith from the Virgin Islands. On Territories Talk, what we do is we bring together the voices, the accomplishments, the stories, the desires, the plans, the ambitions, the expectations of our people and the wider Caribbean. This afternoon, I have such pleasure. I'm almost speechless with pleasure. I have absolute pleasure to introduce to you, to speak with the Premier of Antigua. Of Anguilla. I'm so sorry about that. Mrs. Cora Richardson Hodge is the first woman premier of Anguilla, and that's why my words are getting all mixed up, because this is such an important thing. On Territories Talk, we make a point of celebrating and acknowledging women in leadership, women's accomplishments, and we are also very clear that the political sphere is one of the areas in which the women of the Caribbean really, really, really need to be finding our place and sitting in the seats. And so it is with great pleasure that I introduce this afternoon for a conversation, a woman that I met a few years ago when I was a speaker, and whom I have utmost confidence will be exactly what Anguilla needs right now. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Cora Richardson Hodge.
Hi, good afternoon to you, Shirley. Good afternoon to your listening public. It's such a pleasure to be here this afternoon. I hope you don't mind me calling you Shirley. I've known you for so long.
Yes.
And you can call me Cora.
Thank you. Yes, and our listening audience stretches right across the Caribbean. We are partnering with CBN Radio in the Virgin Islands, ZGB Radio right here in Montserrat, and I'm in the studios of ZGB at the moment. Radio Turks and Caicos Islands, Channel 82 in Bermuda, Cayman Marl Road in the Cayman Islands, and CBC in Barbados. But obviously, people listen because we other people in other areas listen because we make a point of reaching out to people. So before I go any further, Cora, let me just congratulate you in person. Let me say how very pleased and proud I am that this has been your accomplishment. How does it feel?
Thank you. I'm so honored to have been selected by the people of Anguilla to be placed in this position as Premier. And so it's a lot of work, a lot of expectations, but I'm so excited to be in this role. And I undertake to do my utmost to properly represent the people of Anguilla.
Yes. And you are joining a small group. I met Madame Eugenia Charles years and years ago, and I came home from school one year. She was at a meeting in Montserrat, and I had the pleasure of meeting her. I met Kamla Prasad Bisesa from Trinidad. I have not yet met Mrs. Simpson Miller or Ms. Motley, but I am just really excited that finally, the women who always do the work. I mean, the tradition is that the women do a lot of the footwork, the groundwork. It's always the women. And in the Caribbean, like everywhere else, we are working with the patriarchy. We are finding our place so that women's contributions can not just be highlighted, but that we have the space to actually give everything that we are capable of. So let me ask you, first of all, tell us something about you. Who are you? Who is Cora Richardson Hodge, other than Madam Premier, because we're going to come to that.
Yes, certainly. So I was actually born in St. Thomas to Anguillan parents. My father was born in Anguilla. My mother's father was born in Anguilla. And so my roots span from east to west across the island. As a child, I would have I suppose I took sick. I was ill. I had severe asthma. My parents sent me to Anguilla to live. So out of the five of us, it's five of us, 4 siblings. I would have been the only child to have ever spent time in Anguilla as a result of that. And so I always had a close affinity to Anguilla. And so during Christmas, summers, any time off I had from school, I would come to Anguilla to spend my time. And so Ultimately, I met my husband here in Anguilla. And so after law school, I attended the law school in the US. And after law school, I did a conversion course and then I relocated to Anguilla and I've been here ever since. And so I have two daughters. I would have opened my law practice in 2006 and up until today. And so I'm very happy and very pleased that the people of Anguilla have chosen to put me in this position.
Yes. Let me ask you one thing about the political journey, because I know how difficult it can be, just politics in the Caribbean generally, with all the strictures and restrictions we have. And then also because you're a woman. In some years ago, I did a meeting with a workshop with some women about political violence and in political violence against women. And one of the things that was clear to us was that in the Caribbean, we have our problems, but generally we are not, quote unquote, afraid of serious violence. But there is such a resistance in some parts of the Caribbean to women having positions of power. Yeah.
Yeah,
How
it's
was
interesting.
getting to this?
Right. So just a little bit of backdrop in terms of Anguilla's history. During the 1967 revolution, a lot of women were actually at the forefront of the revolution. And so our books, the historical references will showcase the fact that many women played a significant role in the Anguilla Revolution. And during the times of severe drought, etc., when our men would go off to different countries, they would go on long journeys. They were sailors and would go from Santo Domingo down to the U.S. Virgin Islands, Aruba, Curacao, and the women stayed home and took care of the children and raised the children. And so we've always come from a strong lineage of women taking the lead here in Anguilla. And so, yes, there is that element because there are still certain sectors which would be deemed to be quote unquote male sectors, and construction would be one of those, air conditioning, those type of technical professions. You would find that there are not many women in those professions, but for the most part, I think that Anguilla is certainly coming of age. And even during the campaign, there was still, some elements of persons you would hear say, "Oh, a woman can't lead me," etc., etc. And so you have that, but but you also have very progressive thinking persons who believe that it was time for a woman to be able to take the lead.
Yes, we think it's full time. And in fact, I told my sisters the other day that I'm going to reclaim my Anguillan lineage because my great grandfather actually is a Fleming who came from
Oh, is
Anguilla.
that right? Oh,
Yes,
okay.
yes. So,
Yes. You need to.
so yeah, I'm proud of my people.
Yes, yes, very good, very good.
Yeah. So Anguilla is here in Montserrat, for example. We feel the information that's coming to us is that Anguilla is rising. I know you had some troubles a little while ago. Many of us did. Everybody did. But you're working. Anguilla seems to be on a roll, on a rise. I mean, we're looking, for example, at your new entertainment arena. I'm really interested in your water, the week. What's it? It's not sailing week.
Well, you have Festival del Mar, you have Carnival, Festive.
Yes.
Which one? Boat racing?
That's what boat racing. Yes.
Mhm.
So, what are your concerns? What do you think are the challenges there? Because you have a new airport, your tourism is expanding, and that seems to be the plan to bring more and more people into Anguilla. What are your concerns? Because we know that it's an economic question, yes, primarily, but that comes with desirable and perhaps not so desirable results. What are you concerned mostly about?
So, as you are aware, elections were held on the 26th of February. So, we're just a little bit more than a month in. And while it is that we have the airport, which is under construction, the terminal building, and once the terminal building is completed, then the runway is expected to commence. And while the previous administration would have focused on infrastructural projects, our campaign and our belief was that, and still is, that there was not the type of regard for the people of Anguilla that it should have been. So let me put it like this. Our party, the Anguilla United Front, has always believed in development, has always believed in infrastructure, but we also believe that it should never come at the expense of the people. And in 2021, under the previous administration, they would have implemented a goods and services tax. That goods and services tax was a campaign football in 2020. And the then APM administration would have said that they would not implement GST. And remember, in the wake of COVID, in 2021, they brought the goods and services tax to the House of Assembly. And the GST is a broad based tax. It was the first tax of its kind, of that nature, that was being imposed on the people of Angola. And I do believe that that GST was also a serious issue in the campaign in 2025, for which the APM administration could not overcome. And the reality is that while there's a goods and services tax, it's a tax, a broad-based tax that would have helped to stabilize our the revenue in terms of our taxes. At the same time, there was a feeling that it was too onerous on the people. And I'll give you an example. In 2023, the GST was anticipated to bring in 90 million. Instead, it brought in 155. So it brought in $65 million more than was anticipated. And in those circumstances, one would say, well, you know what, it must be that you're overtaxing the country. It means that if you anticipated that you were getting X amount and you brought in so much more, then the first thing that you ought to do is to look at decreasing the level of the taxation on the people of the country. That did not happen. What happened instead was the Anguilla Progressive Movement would have looked at infrastructural projects. So they used the taxes to be able to develop the infrastructure across the island. So the airport is being built from the tax revenue. There's no additional funding other than perhaps about 12 million that's coming from 12 million pounds coming from the UK. Mm-hmm. But the balance of that, the $450 million, is coming from the tax base. And the runway is expected to come out from the tax base as well. So when you look at the decisions that were made, the people of Anguilla felt that there was no regard for them, and they made their feelings known at the elections on the 26th of February. And so the extent of the cost of living is one. And if we look at what's happening in the last few days in the US as well, and we know the implications that we can expect to see, and already we're seeing the results of those in terms of what we anticipate will be increasing costs of shipping that will impact us in the region. But also the other areas, in addition to cost of living, we have the increase in gun violence that is being experienced in every jurisdiction, across the Caribbean. And the question as to how to grapple with the increase in gun violence that we're currently experiencing. So there has to be a relook. We have to take a look at our social infrastructure and determine whether or not it is suitable for where we are in this place and time. And so a number of considerations will be looked at in terms of ensuring that we grapple and we deal and we address the situation with gun violence in our country. And those are just two of the many issues that we see that we intend to address under this administration.
Yeah. Talk to me about gun violence for a little bit, Cora, please, because as you say, it is a problem everywhere. And a few years ago, what Montserrat did was make a declaration that people basically cannot own guns, even guys who go hunting. So we have a good 2/3 of our island is uninhabited, and there are quote unquote wild animals, cattle, pigs, goats, right? And so people go shooting them, but they're not allowed to keep their guns at home. And at first people were fussing because, I have my gun, I'm supposed to have my gun and so on. But it's a really serious issue. I have friends in Antigua who tell me they'd love to come home, Montserrat, for example, who'd love to come home for longer periods, but are afraid to leave their homes alone. Their wives are home, their children are home. St. Lucia is having serious problems. Anguilla is small, though.
Yes.
And so on the one hand, it might seem that it'll be not so hard to tackle. But so what is it that makes it so difficult? In places like Anguilla, St. Kitts and Nevis, also, for example, what makes it so difficult?
Yeah. So in Anguilla's case, we have a porous border. And
Mm-hmm.
so because we're practically 18 minutes by boat from St. Martin as well.
Mm-hmm.
We are
Yes.
18 minutes by boat. And of course we're further away from other Caribbean islands, etc. But one of the issues I think that we have to grapple with is to protect, to monitor our borders more closely than we have been. And that accounts for a lot of the importation into Anguilla. The fact that you may have boats that may come at different hours, that may come under the dark of night and may be unseen. And so we have a number of beaches on our island, just like every other island. We have a number of beaches all around. And so in those circumstances, the question that we have to ask ourselves is, how do we tackle it? So we have to tackle it on two fronts. The one front is in terms of greater border control, border protection, and the other front is dealing with it within our addressing the social issues that currently
Yes.
exist in our society, and addressing the question: why is it that our young people are attracted to guns? Is it that we see what is happening in the outer world, that we emulate, where gun violence may be something that may be considered to be the quote unquote norm in other countries? And so we have to look at that, and we have to determine whether or not our children are being influenced. And if they are being influenced, why? Is it that our children are raising themselves? Are our parents working two jobs and not at home? Is it that they find themselves, or young children find themselves on the streets, on the corners, with older persons, and get themselves involved in those elements? And so there are a number of factors that we have to look at, but ultimately it comes back to the social fabric. It comes back to our homes as well, because I think that what is often unspoken and overlooked is the family situations that some of our children may be grappling with. And so we have to take a deep, hard look at ourselves, at our social fabric. And this is not just Anguilla. I'm just talking about, across the region where we see these issues are coming up. Gang violence, what is it that, why is it that they're attracted to gang violence, to gangs? Is it that they don't feel they have that family connection at home, so they want to have that family connection elsewhere? Is it that they are co-opted into joining? And so there are many issues that we have to look at. But I would say for sure that we, and it would be great if we establish linkages across, especially the OTs, but certainly across the region, greater linkages, because we do have some on the police level. But I think that we need to start to look at a number of other issues in order to completely address the issues that we see.
Yeah, one of the problems that all of us face is the movement of people. On the one hand, we're all Caribbean people, and so we have a lot in common. But our people are struggling with some of the differences amongst us. Yeah. How's Anguilla handling that? How is that for you?
Yeah, I believe that it's similar. We have a number of persons that come into the country. Of course, they come in by way of work permit, they come in by way of visitors, visa in certain circumstances. And so, uh, yes, the idea behind the movement of people may translate over into uh, uh, a more dynamic economy where you have different persons, different cultures, and all of that feeding into the evolution of your country. And the question is, how do you maintain it? How do you continue to keep the culture of your country? How do you continue to keep the elements and the essence of what you want to keep for your island? And so that we have to constantly grapple with that. And I think important steps are where there is, for instance, a community college, and you introduce the history of your country, the history of Anguilla, and the evolution of Anguilla and the Anguilla Revolution, and all of these things, I think gives people a greater appreciation when they come to live in your country.
Yeah. One of the challenges we have in Montserrat with that is children, the school. our schools, our one secondary school is seriously challenged right now, and one of the problems is that there are children growing up in Montserrat who are born in Montserrat and who, however, feel that they belong somewhere else, and yet there is we are on. And put this way, it is difficult to bring them in fully because we have these restrictions because of our relationship with Great Britain that says who can be what. How is how's that for you? What are you doing with that? Because you probably have the same issue.
Yes, we do have it. It's the British Nationality Act. And
Yes.
that act would preclude persons from becoming British Overseas Territory
Mhm.
citizens. So what we did, and when I say we, I mean a former Anguilla United Front administration between 2015 and 2020. And during that time, I sat as Minister of Immigration and Minister of Constitutional Affairs. And the first thing that we did was we changed the policy in terms of not charging children or not charging parents for the children to remain in Anguilla. So, for instance, if you came from another island, let's say you came from Jamaica and your child was born in Anguilla, under the British Nationality Act, which applies to all of the overseas
Yes.
territories, that child cannot receive a citizenship by way of being a British Overseas Territory citizen. They would have to take the citizenship of their parents. And what that means is, for all intents and purposes, the child is living in Anguilla. They go to school in Anguilla. They don't know anything other than Anguilla, but they can't get a passport. They can't see. It says born in Anguilla, but you're not born in Anguilla by virtue of being an Anguillian. And so what we did in 2016, 2017 was we changed our immigration policy so that we do not charge parents for children born in Anguilla. And
Hmm.
then under the British Nationality Act, at the age of about 9, you can apply for naturalization for the child. So what we did was we removed the obstacle of
Yes.
charging for time, and allowed them to remain in the country. Once they were born in Anguilla, you remain in the country, and then at 9 you apply for naturalization and you receive your naturalization at that point in time. So we did that, and I think that many persons were grateful for that change in policy direction. And so I always say that there's more than one way to address an issue. And so while it is we can't change the British Nationality Act, and though we've tried, I
Hmm.
believe probably in Montserrat as well, every
Yes.
administration has raised the issue. Okay, we have children born in Anguilla, we have children come to Anguilla from 2 years old, 1 years old, and they still are not treated the same as other children. And so from an immigration perspective, we have control over our immigration laws, and so we try to deal with it in that way. Also in 2019, as Minister of Constitutional Affairs, we have amended our Anguilla Constitution. Now, our Anguilla Constitution is the oldest constitution of all the overseas territories. And I am aware that other overseas territories are now going back for
Hmm.
even further revisions,
Yes.
or to have discussions in terms of upgrading their constitutions. And we still are, operating largely in our 1982 Anguilla Constitution. So we are behind time. But what we were able to do as part of our constitutional reform was while we were unable to have wholesale constitutional amendment before 2020, we were able to include amendments in our 2019 amendment, which recognized not only children, but grandchildren and
Yes.
great grandchildren, so that those persons would now be able to come in to obtain belongership, to own land, to be able to acquire inherited land and register it in their names, because prior to that, they had to obtain an alien land holding license to hold land that may have come from their mother
For the
or their
mother. Yeah.
grandfather. And so we made those changes. And under my remit now as premier, I also have constitutional reform under my portfolio, and I will be moving forward with wholesale constitutional reform as well.
Yes, and that Monsat's been having some conversations about that too. We are a 2010 constitution order, but we're also far behind. There's so much that needs to be revisited in these constitutions.
Right,
But
right.
an issue of migration, outward migration, people leave, our children leave,
They do.
The ones that have a long history leave and the ones that have a shorter history leave. Do you see that as a challenge? And if so, what are you doing to hold them, to keep them, let them go to school and make sure they come back?
Yes, it is. It is a challenge. And while it is that we in Anguilla, we want to hold on, we also recognize that there are outside forces that are offering our people a better life, better packages. So, for instance, if you're a teacher or you're a nurse, and those professions are highly sought after in the U.S. mainland or in the U.K., etc. And so the packages that they offer may be more tempting than to remain in Anguilla. And so that's one of the key issues that we have identified that we need to address. First of all, we have to provide greater opportunities for our young people here in Anguilla. And when I say greater opportunities, not just for those who have graduated, but for those who are leaving, the high school leavers, even the ones in high school. What is it that will attract them or ensure that they come back to Anguilla? Yes, you have your family, you have your friends, you have a home base, but sometimes people feel that that's not enough, and that's why they seek greener pastures so that they can take care of their children, that take care of their families. And a lot of times we also see situations where parents leave to be able to provide great assistance for their children. So if you have a child that is suffering from a disability, and we do not have the opportunity in our countries to be able to deal with them, then they would leave to be able to get the best opportunities for their children. So we have a lot of work to do to be able to provide a platform, not just to encourage people to stay, but to bring them back home. We have, I'm afraid to even count how many Anguillians are outside of Anguilla versus how many are in Anguilla.
Yeah.
And in recent times, we've been seeking out our Anguillians wherever they are, young professionals, talented, highly educated, and willing to come back to Anguilla if the landscape is such that it encourages them to return. And so that's what we're looking at. It's a focus of ours to bring our people back home, and that in turn builds the economy. So when we're talking about increasing the population, we would want to ideally increase our population size by bringing our people home and encouraging them to invest, to work, to be able to upgrade our own systems here in Anguilla.
Yeah. Let me just take one moment to acknowledge our media partners. And folks, you're listening to Territories Talk. I'm speaking with the Honorable Cora Richardson Hodge, the Premier of Anguilla, the first woman Premier of Anguilla, and the one who is going to make the CARICOM meetings and the OECS meetings and so on look better.
Make them happy.
Yes.
So, Shirley, if I may, I'm so curious about elections. I saw you in September. We were in the UK together, and you were just about to go into the heat of a debate,
Yes.
the
The
elections.
elections.
Yes, and I think I heard you mention you were on an interview with Josephine Gomes Connor some weeks ago, and you have made mention of I think 50% of your candidates were women. Is that correct? Did I hear you correctly?
47, 48, something. So yes.
That's impressive.
It was really good. Really good.
Yeah. Okay.
And again, they voted mostly for the men. And one of the things was because you want to lead, because a woman's not supposed to lead. So we have 3 women. We've had 3 women before, and everybody was kind of hoping we'd get 4 or 5 women. It didn't happen this time because we're still working on that. Women need to keep quiet thing. Sadly, we are.
Exactly. Really?
Yes. People tell me this. I mean, Cora, when I was a speaker one time, I had a challenge with a member of parliament. I had to sanction her, and people told me, not just one person, men and women told me, you made the right decision, but it should have been a man doing that. And people reminded me of that last year and during the campaign. And so, we have some work to do to get there.
Yes. It's interesting that our countries are so close, our territory is so close and yet so far in terms of how we think about things.
Yes. One of the things that we laughed at today was and I say laughed, we didn't laugh at the problem. We laughed at what we thought of the problem. We were talking today about the new tariffs that Mr. Trump has put on pretty much everybody, and we noticed that there's a 10% tariff on goods going from Montserrat to the U.S. And so the
Anguilla
question,
too. Anguilla
and
too.
yeah, our question was, are we still exporting people to the U.S.? Because, you know, but this is likely to affect your tourism, though.
Yeah, tourism, shipping,
Yeah.
and it's actually an active conversation that we're having in terms of how we are able to weather the storm, because we
Mhm.
simply don't know how long this is going to last.
Yeah.
And what we do know is that, once the tariffs kick in, we import, and I would imagine Montserrat is the same thing, over 90,
Yes.
95% of what comes into the country imported from the US.
Hmm.
And, with the tariffs and what he's doing in relation to the cargo ships, I think that we
Yeah.
can definitely see that we're going to have a direct impact. And so the questions that we have to ask ourselves are, what are we going to do
Hmm.
in the immediate, short term, long term, to be able to address it? So immediate, are there things that we can do within our tax structures to be able to address the increase in food prices that we can expect to see very shortly? Medium term, other measures that we can put in place in terms of looking at intra-regional shipping. I've spoken about this when I was at the OECS meeting in St. Martin, and I spoke about intra-regional shipping and being able to trade amongst ourselves. And when I say amongst ourselves, I mean across the Caribbean region,
Hmm.
from Jamaica down to South America. And what measures can we put in place to be able to increase that type of trade between ourselves? Because if you look at many of the islands, Jamaica, so many products are produced in Jamaica, and
Yeah.
how much of it is actually exported to us. Saint Santo Domingo, I mean, when you talk about meats and vegetables and so many other things, Trinidad, Guyana, Belize. So many countries, that Chile, right, that we probably don't take full advantage of in terms of trading with them. And so we need to start to look at that, and how can we increase that type of trade, and perhaps even lessen the decrease, the lessen the the need to rely on imports from the US. We also need to look at food security in a serious way.
Hmm.
How is it that we're going to be able to grow more for ourselves? Many countries, certainly we in Angola, we've spoken about it in a lot in for many years, in a lot of ways. But how do we actually put it into effect? And so my focus, certainly along those lines, is to increase food security in our own country, but also to enhance and improve trade between our brothers and sisters in the region.
Yeah. And that is a question that Monsa's grappling with also. And in fact, at the CARICOM meeting in January, February, Mr. Mead, our premier, spoke about the need for us to ease transportation. I think he spoke mostly about air transportation, but it's all one and the same. In Montserrat, we get a lot of our food from Dominica,
Mhm.
but of course, our food security requires that we also produce some at home. The problem,
Exactly.
though, is that our people, and probably your people also, we've come to rely on rice. And I'm not talking rice from Guyana. We come to rely on noodles. Children they come to school with noodles, with
Mhm.
ramen noodles. And so and I remember some years ago in Trinidad, when I went for dinner. We had our dinner was a buffet, and I picked up things like breadfruit and dashing and so. And somebody said to me, "Oh, in Montserrat, people, you all eat those things." So here's the question: in terms of what we eat and just general nutrition, because there are also issues of our health, the quality of our health here, which are very important. And Professor Beckles has been talking a lot about hypertension and,
Yes.
diabetes and so on, that we throughout the region have a problem with. How is Anguilla with that? And what are you thinking how do you think you can manage to have us maybe redirect our dietary preferences?
Yes. Yeah. Well, we also grapple with non-communicable diseases. Yes.
Mhm.
And I suppose the concern is that these are things that are derived from our diets. and they could
Mhm.
be assisted if we change our diet. And so maybe what is happening is a good thing in relation to that, because as opposed to ramen noodles, should we be eating sweet potato or even regular potatoes, and those you can grow in our grounds. And you talk about carrots, local carrots, vegetables, and even when you look at the possibility of hydroponics, and that's something that we're looking at
Yes.
keenly as well here in Anguilla, and expanding the type of produce that we make here, or that we grow here in Anguilla. And so I think that there's an opportunity to change the landscape of what exists now. We don't have to be stuck with the ramen noodles and the unhealthy food, but we also, it comes down to a desire to make a change, change to a healthy lifestyle. It comes down to wanting to ensure that we have our food necessary, that we can, as opposed to importing, that we can rely here in Anguilla in term. So for instance, we have a number of egg farmers. How do we ensure that they produce in a way that is sufficient to be able to not just take care of the people in our island, but also to be able to export, to earn additional revenue. Our fishing, we have 200 nautical miles, our special economic zone.
Mhm.
And so, how can we utilize that to the best of our ability? And so there's work to be done, and that is something one of our ministers, Minister Kyle Hodge, and Honorable Cordell Richardson, will be looking at in the short term.
Yeah. Shipping is a really important one for us all, both in terms of movement of goods, movement of people. Air travel is so expensive, and fuel is going to become even more expensive. And so we are going to be stuck, I think, with even higher fares throughout the Caribbean. Liat has begun, it seems, and is trying to make some headway. But our people getting to each other. I mean, I remember again some years ago, the conversation was government meetings, Caribbean government meetings would be much more easily and inexpensively had if we met in Miami rather in the Caribbean.
Mm.
And with your new airport coming on stream, how the I'm not even quite sure what the question is here, because for me it really is important that we meet, that we get to be able to easily go back and forth. And I'm thinking in terms of our people connecting,
Yes.
for culture, for education, for debating society, and so on. I know that children have a hard time getting back and forth,
Mm.
just because it's so expensive.
Yeah. What could
How,
be done, I
yeah, what,
suppose. What could
yes, what
Yeah,
could be done?
it's something that we're all looking at. So for instance, Anguillians were accustomed of jumping on a plane and going to St. Thomas in
Mm-hmm.
particular. And now you find that it's very difficult to travel between Anguilla and St. Thomas. And if you do, you may find that your airfare may range from $500 to $800. Or you may have to go to St. Martin, take a boat to BVI, and then go from BVI to St. Thomas. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you talk about the travel between us as a region, it has really fallen short of where we used to be. So it's almost as if we've gone backward. And the challenge
Backwards,
is,
yes.
how do we get back to a place where it is easy for our people to travel amongst each other? Now, what's interesting is someone asked me the other day, and it wasn't someone from the region, it was a U.S. citizen and his wife on vacation in Anguilla, and they asked, well, have you thought about having a ferry service
Mm-hmm.
across the region, right? So
Yeah.
that someone like us, like us, could hop on a boat and go to the neighboring islands and spend a couple of days and come back. And I thought it was an intriguing question. Yeah, the good thing is I believe that travel by boat has improved over the years, because I
Mm-hmm.
remember as a very young child, it took 3 days on a boat to get from St. Thomas to Anguilla. And that was a trip that my father would have, thought that
Mm-hmm.
was a for us to take as opposed to airfare.
Yeah, yeah.
3 days from St. Thomas to
Wow.
Anguilla. And so I would imagine that that's not the case these days, right? And
No.
so, right. And so travel by ferry between our islands, is that something that's feasible? And so it's worth looking at as well. But certainly the convenience, if by airfare, going by air as opposed to going by boat, the time, the speed, and so the only issue is access and cost. And so I'm not sure I can tell you how we can best answer that question right now, but I know it's
Yeah.
an ongoing question in terms of LIAT, in terms of Cape Air, Silver Airwaves, all of these, small services
Yeah.
that, how can we improve it? It's still something that we're grappling with.
Yeah, we're grappling with that in Montserrat big time, and the ferry is really important. And every time the ferry leaves here, that's always the question I ask. Why can't I just get a ferry to go from here to there? And the first time I came to Anguilla, I was in AYPA. We went to Anguilla. Actually, it was for a funeral, but that's what we got to St. Martin, and then got the ferry over to Anguilla. And it would just be so much better for our region in so many ways if we could find these ways to easily reach each other. But
Yeah,
you said earlier, you talked about improving the linkages amongst the OTs, and I take it amongst the rest of the region.
generally, yes.
Yeah, we've had those conversations, Cora. Those conversations have been had for years and years and years at every level. I mean, I don't think a CARICOM meeting or even, any workshop among governments happens and there is not
Right.
this question. And I'm asking this because I'm doing a little bit of stereotyping here. Women are better communicators. Women are much more likely to reach out and make connections and create family than men are. So can you see this as part of what you might want to help us do?
Yes, well, I can say that generally I like to follow through
Mhm.
on plans, on ideas. And the other thing as well is that we may be at a time and place where it's absolutely necessary. And so in the past, it was easy to say, but you had all of these alternatives that were available to you. In this space and time where we are now, we see that there's a need, and it reminds me of COVID.
Yeah.
And I know in Montserrat, you probably experienced the same thing. So, for instance, in our school system, you may have had some teachers that were online, but other teachers that refused to go online. And
Mhm.
COVID forced everyone to go online, to become familiar with technology. And so today, the technology has been integrated, whereas before it was a struggle because you have it there, but there's no need. And so I look at that and I think about the situation where we're in now, where yes, we may have said it in the past, but today we're seeing that there's a need to be able to do something. And once these increasing costs hit, once the increasing cost of living becomes evident, then I believe all of our leaders, all of us as leaders, will be forced, for all intents and purposes, to seriously look at how we trade amongst each other, how we travel amongst each other, because we're now in a place and time where we realize that it is better for us to be able to rely on ourselves because we have such close connections and such close linkages between each other.
Yeah.
I want to, Shirley, there's one other thing. When you very early on we spoke about two items, which was the cost of living
Mhm.
as well as the gun violence and crime. And I also want to add the renewable energy cost of fuel,
Yeah.
the cost of electricity, and that's something that is a key priority for us as well. And that's of course because we're surrounded, the amount of sunlight that we have, there's no reason why we should not have progressed further along in terms of renewable energy than where we are today. And the reliance on fossil fuels is going to translate and has translated and continues to over to high costs for our people. And so once we're able to move towards renewable energy and integrate solar energy, wind energy into our systems, then we will be able to see cost savings and pass on those costs not only to the
Mhm.
consumers but to businesses as well. And so that's one of our key priorities during this administration.
I'm glad you brought that up, Cora, because tell me some more about that. Because let me go back to Montserrat. Our challenge is that, of course, we have the sunlight, we have a lot of wind, but we also have a grid. And so if you have too many people off the grid, it makes it more expensive for the people on the grid.
That's
And
correct.
the government here has built solar farms and so on, and we're still not getting it right. We still
Yes.
haven't quite found it. How are you doing?
So the key, as far as we're concerned, is to ensure that our electricity company is at the forefront of that change.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and we're currently experiencing that as well because our electricity company has been delayed in taking the lead in it. We see where businesses, hotels, major developments, homes are coming off the grid, and that in turn will translate to higher costs for our people. So what we have to do is our electricity company has to take the lead, has to develop the infrastructure, has to develop the grid system where there's a tie back so that if there's an overflow in terms of solar energy, it can feed back into the system, the grid tie legislation. And so all of these issues need to be addressed. And so we are committed to moving forward very quickly in terms of our electricity company, Anguilla, taking the lead in terms of renewable energy and setting the tone.
Yeah, and of course, the all of this is important for the environment, which is a big deal.
That's
And
correct.
we in the region are suffering the consequences of other people's malfeasance, is what I call it. But here's the thing: you also there are plans in place for a marina,
That's
and
correct.
I know Anguilla has always been very proud of your beaches, and and there's been a lot of care taken. So I remember also sailing into Anguilla once, and we got pulled in by your Coast Guard because we had fishing rods out. We weren't fishing; they were just sort of stuck in the things at the back.
Yes.
And we had a conversation about the waters around Anguilla being a national park. How are you going to reconcile those two?
So the marina, there's one marina that's contemplated on the
Mhm.
western side of the island, and that it will be by way of dredging an existing pond. And
Mhm.
so the idea isn't to establish a marina in the open waters, but to turn that pond into a marina where there's a natural inlet so that the marina can cater to not just yachts, but also create a residential area so that you will have villas and condos, etc., that are supported by the marina as well. So we're looking at transforming a pond. Some people would have considered a pond not to be viable. And so
Mhm.
as a result of that, there's not really much damage or footprint to our ocean.
What about big cruise ships? Are you going to have those? And if so, how are you going to manage them?
There have been ideas in terms of we currently have cruise ships that come into Anguilla, but our
Mhm.
cruise ships are of the smaller sort, maybe
Mhm.
200, 300 at the most. It's a policy decision that we have to make whether or not we want to move towards the large cruise ships that have 3,000 people on board, or
Yeah.
whether we stay with it small and exclusive the way that we have been. And so it's a direction that every administration has to come to terms with and deciding for themselves. Are we going to keep the island in terms of cruise ship arrivals, etc., the way that it is, or are we going to develop it into a full-fledged cruise ship hub so that we can compete with St. Martin and other countries? So we have to look at our own situation. We have to determine for ourselves what is the ideal
Mhm.
and balance that we have to strike, because at the same time you might end up damaging or destroying the very thing that
Exactly.
keeps Anguilla the way that it is. And so many persons like to come to Anguilla because they like the exclusivity of it, the feel
Mhm.
of it, the quiet of the island. But by bringing those cruise ships, etc., are we going to destroy that? And are we making a decision to move towards a different type of product that we're creating for our people? The other thing as well is that once you move towards those larger ships, you must have the infrastructure to support.
Yeah.
So our hospitals, just like in
Mhm.
terms of the airport as well, our hospitals have to be up to par, because if any number of persons get ill while they're in the country, they have to be taken care of.
Mhm.
Our road networks, our generally the infrastructure, and so there's a lot of work to consider. Not only that, once they come off of the boat, where are they going? Do we have? Is it that we
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
to build, boutiques? or stores, or is it that we take them to the beach? So is it going to be, simply, somewhere where you come and you head straight to the beach, or do we develop our island tours so that you can
Yeah.
visit different places? And so there's a lot to consider. I think for right now, we have to determine the policy direction that we want for our country, and that is by way of consultation and engagement with the people of Anguilla.
Yes. Premier, we're running out of time here. Sadly, I could sit and talk all day. So let me ask you something about your people, because that clearly is the foundation. Without those, you get nothing done.
That's correct.
Without those, we don't have a country, and so it is important that we take care of them. So let me ask you, what do you know that you can count on where your people are concerned, as far as your development is? What do you know that you can actually depend on Anguillans to be or to do?
Support,
Mm-hmm.
definitely support, and truth to power, because at the end of the day, what I get for the entire time that I've been elected, and I've been elected now since 2015. In fact, from the time I ran, I first entered the political arena in 2010, is to be surrounded by people who care, who are honest, and who are driven to see the best in Anguilla. And those people impact me, because what they say to me, they hold my feet to the fire. They ensure that, if we say that we're going to do something, that we follow through on it. And we always, as people say, that I always look twice, or measure twice and cut once.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And when you do that, you make the type of decisions that people want to see. They want to feel as if they're being considered when the decisions are being made. And so that's important for me. But as a people, I think our people are extremely resilient. We see it time and time again when Anguilla has gone through numerous disasters, from as far back, even long before 1967, with the revolution, to the days where there were severe droughts in our country, and the UK wanted to relocate all of our people from Anguilla to
Mm-hmm.
another island, and we refused. And so many persons stayed in Anguilla to eke out a living, and that would have created that strength and that resilience that you see come out time and time again when we're faced with adversity. And so we have been through adversity, certainly from the days of the economic downturn, through Hurricane Irma, through COVID. And so where we are today, I think, is by God's grace. And the domain name that we have been given, that is
Yeah.
now working for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are the kind of things that we look to, that we say, okay, you know what, we have been given these things. We've been given our beautiful beaches. Our people are friendly and nice. And so persons come time and time again to our shores because they come for the food, they come for the hospitality, they come for the people. And so while all of that is the case, at the end of the day, it is our people who are important and will continue to keep Anguilla going.
Yes. Yeah, we have talked a lot. We got in a few minutes I have left. I want to ask you about a specific segment of the population. We talk a lot about young people. They are the future. They should be allowed, and education, all that. And we don't spend a lot of time talking about our elders. I'm asking this also because just recently I read an article. I can't remember his name, Professor somebody, who has this notion that all over the world, women outlast men, and so women become grandmothers, and so there's a reason why women live longer than men, because women have to transmit information to the younger generation. Obviously, we want all of our people to live to be 100 and live healthy and well, but we often don't make much accommodation for them to either transmit what they know or just really to live well. So I want, and this is important to me. I think it's really, really critical that we begin to do that in the Caribbean. And so I want to ask you, how do you feel about this? How do you see what does Anguilla have in store for her
Yes.
teachers, her grandmothers and grandfathers?
Right. It's an important question. One of the advancements that the previous administration which we applaud, would have been to provide for senior shield. So it is essentially, once you're over the age of 70 and you go to the hospital, then your needs are taken care of. So the hospital bill is covered. The any medication that you can get at the pharmacy is covered. Now, of course, there are shortcomings in relation to that. So, for instance, if our pharmacies our government pharmacies do not have the medication that they need, then they have to go to the private pharmacy and pay full price. So there are some adjustments that we intend to make to the Senior Shield program, but that was certainly a step forward in terms of taking care of our elderly. It's also important because at the age of 70, many insurance companies drop our elderly citizens. And so at the time where they need it the most, they have no insurance to be
Yeah.
able to take care of them. And so that's just one aspect. But I also believe we need to look at our social security system and the amount that our retired persons receive on a monthly basis, because it's not significant.
Yeah.
In some cases, you hear $300 you know, you have $500 and that's really not a lot to live
No.
off. And so we have to start to revisit our social security structures and determine what we need to make it sustainable. Ideally, once you've reached retirement age, you've put into the system, you should be able to maintain a decent lifestyle
Absolutely.
from your social security that you've put away and that you've paid into from the time that you were 18. Now, granted, social security in Anguilla was started in the 1980s. And so for a lot of our elderly persons today, they may not have paid into the
Yeah.
system at the time that they were young.
Yeah.
But certainly for those of us today who are paying into the system from the time we leave school, then we should see the returns of Social Security in a higher amount that we're receiving on a monthly basis. So that's one aspect. Health is another aspect, but also I do believe that we need to provide additional services across the. If you have persons who need to go to the grocery store, what is the measure? Do we have vehicles, to be able to pick them up and take them to the store, take them to the doctor, and so while those things exist in other countries, they don't exist in Anguilla currently. The other thing as well is at the grocery store. Once you present a senior card, should you receive a discount in terms of food items, etc. So it doesn't have to be solely health, and it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be solely social security, but there are other measures where the government can play a role in ensuring that these are the kinds of benefits that our elderly are able to enjoy.
Yes. Thank you very, very much, Madam Premier. It has been a pleasure. Let me
Shirley,
just say once again, I wish you all the very, very, very best.
thank you
Yes.
so much. It's such a pleasure speaking with you. It's good to see you, and I'm
You
sure I'll
too.
see you in the next go around somewhere, somehow, very soon.
Yes. Yes. Right. Thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Folks,
All
you
the
have
best
been
to you.
listening. You too. Folks, you have been listening to the Honorable Cora Richardson Hodge, the Premier of Anguilla. This has been Territories Talk for April 3rd, 2025. Thank you very much for listening. Let me acknowledge once more our media partners: CBN Radio Virgin Islands, FM 90.9, ZGB Radio Montserrat, and I'm in the studios at Radio Montserrat right now, Radio Turks and Caicos Islands, Channel 82 in Bermuda, Cayman Marl Road, and CBC in Barbados, Channel 8. Thank you all very, very much for watching. Bye-bye. Somebody says that's our premiere, yeah?
All right.
Chris?
You have to connect me. Do I hang up, Shirley? What am I
Yes.
doing? Leave the studio?
Yeah,
Okay. All right. All
yes.
the best to you.
You
Take care.
too. Take